Welcome to Pickspace Property Management AI Podcast. My name is Maor Cohen. I'm the founder of Pickspace AI, and we're property management software. Let's jump into today's conversation with my guest, Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Rent Partners, Rent Property Management, and Jake and Gino. Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Maor. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Let's start with your journey and what you've built. Try to focus on property management and how you got there. You scaled from single 20 unit building into a very big business of 2,000 units almost. What were the most unexpected growing pains as you moved from owning to owning only a few units to a scale? So if you can give us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Maor. I started in the restaurant business. I owned a restaurant for years and years with the family. And I was in New York. And in 2007, everything changed for me. My father passed away. I had been working with him since I was 7 years old. So I literally asked myself, am I living his dream or am I living my dream? And I had at the time 3 kids. I've got 6 children now. I needed to make more money. That was the bottom line. And I was working harder, making less. 2008 comes, everything shifts. There's a seismic shift, not even in the economy, but all of a sudden eating habits, all of a sudden Grubhub, competition. I can't compete. I'm a mom and pop. I've got one location. I kicked ass. Like we said before, I'm Italian. I know how to cook, but I wasn't making money doing it. So I said, what can I get into? My parents are both immigrants. They were both had a couple of investment properties. I met my business partner, Jake, in 2009. We get together in 2011. He moves to Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm like, Jake, let's start buying properties down there. Nobody at the time, 15 years ago, knew where Knoxville, Tennessee was if he lived in New York. They just didn't. It was one of those sleepy markets, and he moved there. I got really lucky. It took us 18 months to find that first deal. 18 months to find the first deal. Now, everyone's going to say, well, back then it was easy to find deals. Yeah, it may have been easy to find deals, but nobody was lending on those deals and nobody was raising capital for deals. So you can have all the deals in the world you want, but if you can't get them funded or financed, good luck. We were lucky. We found the first deal. 3 months later, we bought our second deal, which was 20. The first deal was 25 units. The second deal was 36 units. Then the third deal, 6 months after that, was 136 units. So we scaled up pretty quickly because we were able to find a partner that had a strong balance sheet. We sort of figured it out. And, you asked the question, what were the challenges? Early on, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm gets burned out. Now, you could do that with a couple of properties. And more, you talk about property management. We didn't have property management software. We had QuickBooks. And what's really incredible to me, if I have to reflect back on, it was only a decade ago. Things have changed completely. Yes, I had to actually get in the car, drive to the property. There's not this software we have right now where you can just jump online, get median income, get pictures of the property, use AI and type in the property, ask for median income, ask for brokers. No, we had a lot more work to do. It was much more of a barrier to entry. And for me, that was great because I love to do that work. I love to get in and I love to learn the market. One of the other challenges was as we started scaling, it's about hiring. It's about hiring the right people in property management and actually starting to implement systems. Because I think the biggest mistake that people make when they invest in real estate is they think that it's either a side hustle or it's just an investment. We talk about buy right, finance right, and manage right. Those are the 3 pillars. And if you look at the shape of a wheelbarrow, Jake one day was out in his yard cutting grass, big landscaper. He had a wheelbarrow there. The 2 back legs are buy right and finance right. If your investment is stable, those 2 legs, once you buy the property and finance it, it's done. The wheel of the wheelbarrow more is what we're going to focus on today. It's in constant motion. Now, if you're either buying a business, you're buying a self-storage, you're buying a single family home, or you're buying a multifamily, whatever it is, that's the framework. That's the yellow brick road, as Jake likes to say. You need to execute on all 3 of those. Now, most people love the sexy part. They love to buy and they love to finance. The operational aspect is not sexy, but that's where you make money in real estate, by buying the businesses, scaling it up. And the last thing I'll say is, if you're out there and you're buying, a 10 unit and a 20 unit, I want you to look at each one of those as individual little entities, little cash generating machines. And if you can look at it from that perspective, as you start scaling and looking at your portfolio, you're going to actually execute on what you want to buy. But if you look at it from that perspective, you're buying a business that has a future stream of revenue. That's what you're buying in multifamily. And how do you maximize that? by executing on management and operations of the property.
I love it. Not only buying finance, but have to be very focused on managing. So, in your own words, what does great property management look in 2025? And where do you think most of operators still fall short?
That is a great question. We could spend the next 17 hours talking about this, but I'm going to put it to you this way. It's very simple. Property management is one of the most difficult businesses to execute on because these managers are not getting paid a ton of money. But to me, let's put that aside. It's a thankless business. It's like the electricity. When the electric is on, nobody even notices it. When you're in your unit and everything's going well, no one says anything. You're not doing it. But when the hot water heater goes, all of a sudden, the property management is the devil. And that's the reality. So to be a good property manager, some of the mistakes that property management companies I see have made is, number one, there's a difference between property management and asset management. Property management deals with customer service. They deal with the customer journey and the customer experience. Jake and I, we want to become the Chick-fil-A of apartment operators in the affordable housing space. We want to try to deliver the superior customer service. And we're going to talk about KPIs and how to try to execute on that. The asset managers are the guys who sit behind the spreadsheets, do the budgets. They work and should work in alignment with the property management companies. They're the ones who report to the investors. Property managers, they're the ones who report and talk to the residents. And where have they gone wrong? They haven't viewed it as a customer service business. They've only looked at it as spreadsheets. And what happened in the last market cycle was they didn't have them long enough to be able to operate. People were doing operations. They were doing renovations, or they were adding value through renovating. They weren't adding value through operating. Now, when 2022 and 2023 came, rates all of a sudden went up, the market cycle lengthened, and people who own multifamilies had to own them longer. Now, all of a sudden, they've got to operate a business, which they had no intention of operating. They were flipping multifamily, and that's the problem. You can still flip it, but while you're flipping it, you still need to manage it. Listen, I have 6 kids. I love having kids. But once you have kids, you've got to raise the kids. It's the same thing in a business or in multifamily. And if you can't do that, go out and find somebody who you can align with to manage your properties, or find a property management company to do that with and for you. But at the end of the day, I'm sorry, this is one last thing I want to say. You have to have what we call a cadence of accountability. You have to be on a call every week with your property management company. You have to be going over the KPIs. You have to diagnose and be proactive. Don't get a report at the end of the month that told you that you had $5,000 in delinquencies. It'd be nice to find out by day 10 so you can do something about it. That's the thing. If you're being reactive with any business, or you're being reactive with your kids, you're going to fail. But if you're being proactive with your kids, you're teaching them good habits. You're teaching them what you want to. You're instilling values into them and not waiting for them to go online and learn those values from somebody else. That's where you make mistakes. And it's the same thing in property management, being proactive and holding them to account and setting a set of expectations that you can both adhere to.
Love it. And I love the analogy on kids as buildings and as properties, because again, you have to invest, right? You're never going to get your return back.
Yes.
You're not investing. And you mentioned Chick-fil-A. I hope at least you're opening Sunday, or that's...
We're not open Sunday, but it's really interesting. Chick-fil-A, you look at that model. What I love with Chick-fil-A, when you look at them and what they're trying to accomplish, they want their employees to have empathy for their customers. That customer comes in, you don't know that customer's story. And I think property managers, if they have that kind of emotional intelligence, somebody's exploding and yelling at you because of a hot water heater went, but you don't really know what the real symptom or what the real issue is. If you can teach your property managers to take a step back, and ultimately we all want to be heard. Everyone wants to be heard. So if you can do that as a property manager or as an asset manager and listen to the other side and come up with a solution, and not always, as we say, get triggered, they're having a tough day. They may need to get to work. They may have lost their job. Their kids may not have gotten to college. Whatever it is, something's going on in their life for them to be so annoyed and pissed off at a simple solution, a simple problem. So I think for property managers, just to be able to take a step back and to have, investors and owners of these companies to be able to have some of these soft skills being taught, I think will help property managers be able to more effectively manage their properties.
Very good. And that actually takes me to the next thing, because a lot of, at least in the southeast, a lot of people started to buy. You said in the beginning you came, no one saw Tennessee, but today it's probably changed. So a lot of new competitor, right? A lot of people buying assets. How do you see these competitor comes in, and if you see tighter margins, and How do you deal with that challenge and change?
To me, it's been great because we've been able to buy at really good bases. Cap rates have compressed and they're going to continue to compress in the Southeast. See, the Northeast in New York and Boston had a really big advantage in the last market cycle. There was a lot of intelligence, a lot of really high paying jobs up there. The workforce was very educated up in the North. Well, in this last market cycle, everything's changed. And a lot of tech areas are opening up in the Southeast. Whether you're looking at Nashville, you're looking at Raleigh, North Carolina, you're seeing all the money go to Miami as far as hedge funds. There's a seismic shift. And I don't think it's going to stop. I think for me, it's actually a benefit. Now, for us, we have over 1,800 units. We have no syndication, so it's only our own capital. So we're very selective. We buy between 200 and 300 units a year, which is great for us. We're vertically integrated, so we manage our own properties. So for us, it's not like we can go on a buying spree and add 1,000 units a year. That means you're going to have to add a lot of payroll. You're going to have to hire a lot of people. So for us, we don't want to outgrow our infrastructure. So we're very happy where we are. We focus on the metric profit per unit. We want profitability in every unit that we buy. That's the ultimate goal. We're not looking at assets under management. We're not looking at fees. We're looking at what can Jake and Gino make at the end of every month with the number of units that we have. And that may not fit for everybody. Some people may want to scale and may want to have a smaller size of a portfolio, but a larger portfolio. That's great. Just understand that if you're going to manage your own assets, there may come a time when you're scaling up that you have to have really good systems to be able to hire amazing property managers and amazing, maintenance techs as well.
And you just spoke about scale and about, in the end of the day, you won't be able to do everything all by yourself. So you'll need tech and technology, and probably you saw a little bit thing if you tech like around the prop tech, property management tech technology coming out. There is anything that caught your eye or anything that you're using today in order to manage everything in a much better scale and or also automation? And
it's interesting, when we started, we were up to 500 units and we didn't have property management software. We had a company called RentPost. It was atrocious. It was terrible, but it worked. But we didn't know any better. We ended up going with AppFolio. AppFolio is a great platform for us. It's what we've been able to use, and they've been scaling along. Yardi and RealPage, they're not really prop tech. They've been around for so long. We don't like the interface. We don't like their software. They're expensive. AppFolio integrates with a lot of our different stuff. There's a company called Property Meld as well. We haven't been using them, but they have maintenance requests and all. We do everything through AppFolio. That's our system. Now, Google's great. I mean, you want to talk about low tech? We have everything with Google Drives. We have been using AI and ChatGPT a lot for the prompts, for talking about email automations, for talking even about when you're underwriting deals, when you're doing market research, for helping out with customer journeys. There are so many different ways that you can use AI. I just don't want people to become so, what's the word? You're becoming so reliant upon AI that you lose the business side about it and the human touch point. I think it's great to be able to use AI as a tool, but don't rely on it totally, that you pull out the customer aspect of it in the touch point where you have a property manager reaching back out and saying, hey, was everything okay? Did you like the tour? You send out a survey and make sure that they reach back out. All these things are really important. Technology is there, I think, to help and to make you more efficient and to capture those leads that you normally couldn't. And ultimately to have your bookkeeping, let's say your accounting, work on things that are important instead of doing coding, instead of doing bookkeeping where they can have AI or even a virtual assistant allow and help you in those tasks.
Okay, very good. So to summarize that, if you can give to your mentees at Jake and Gino or students, what will be the number one obstacle they face when they try to operate themselves by themselves their first 50 or 100 unit?
That's a great question, Maor. When you're first starting out, I think we get in our own way. It's what I call the relationship with money. I wrote a book called Happy Money, Happy Family, Happy Legacy. And the reason why I bring this up is when I started out, before I met Jake, I made every mistake possible in real estate. I didn't have a framework. I was just going out there buying a deal. I didn't know what market research was. I didn't know what underwriting was. I didn't know what due diligence was. Once I honed in on that and I said, I can afford this deal with this much money, and I can't do it by myself, because multifamily, and I think real estate in general, is a team sport. You need a good property manager. You need good investors. You need good software. You need a good CPA. You need a good cost segregation specialist. You need a good inspector. All of these things, when you're first starting out, like anything else in life, they're new to you. And when you're new, something's new, it becomes a little bit more fearful. That's why it's Jake and Gino. It was really hard to do it myself. So if you're out there and you're saying, I really want to get this thing done, go out and find somebody you can partner up with and buy your first or second deal. Because for me, I found it very odd that at some times I really didn't feel like doing the work. Some days I was working at the restaurant. I've got 4 kids. We're homeschooling our kids. My day is really booked, but I've got a partner named Jake. And I told Jake that I was going to underwrite these 3 deals. And I told Jake that I was going to do the bookkeeping. I'm not going to let Jake down. I'll let myself down, but I'm not going to let my business partner down. So having a great partner allows you to get a lot more work done. And it allows you, if you're an integrity-full person, you're not going to let your partner down. You're going to put in the extra work. And let me tell you, when you're stuck there and you're having a challenge and you're at 32 units and you want to scale to 50 and you can't see 5 feet in front of your face, you give your partner a call and say, hey, bro, I'm having a tough day today. What's it look like for you? And all of a sudden, someone's suffering the same way you are. You know you're not alone, and you can share your challenges, and you can sit down and brainstorm. And when we get on a call, me and him, it's like, I don't want to call it magic, but it's a lot of fun because he has one way of looking at things, and I have another way. If I talk to him about Chat GPT and AI, he's like, sort of like, bro. But then he'll say, hey, Gino, can you put this contract through chat and tell me what it says? So some things he doesn't want to do, I love doing, and vice versa. He loves managing. He is the property manager for our portfolio. I was more of the education guy, more of the content creator guy. Those two partners, put them together, you're putting gas on the fire. So if you're looking to start and you're stuck, look for a business partner. And then listen, take one deal at a time. Close your first deal. Don't listen to those gurus out there that are supposed to bring you into the light. We call ourselves gurus because we've been doing it. We've been teaching hundreds of students how to do it. Don't worry if it's a 2 unit or a 5 unit or a 10 unit. That go big or go home does not work in life. That's not the reality. The reality is most of us, I would say a lot of us are kinesthetic learners. We learn by doing. So get out there, close your first deal. It doesn't matter if it's a 2 unit or 4 unit, because once you close that first deal, the broker is going to go and say to themselves, hey, that guy, Jake and Gino, that partnership, they closed the 4 unit. All of a sudden you have a little bit of credibility. And all of a sudden you can start talking about real estate and you're in the business, and that will send you to that next deal, which may be a little bit bigger, which may be a 6 unit and then maybe a 10 unit. And then all of a sudden you figured it out and you're like, I'm going to go into the double digits. I'm going to do a 30 unit deal. That's how life and investing really does work.
Yeah. Wow. That was a big lesson to all our listeners. So I'm very happy you shared it. It was really, really interesting. I think they're going to take a lot of it. So thank you again. And now I'm going to dive a little bit more as the question goes. And, you already shared, because the question says, what property management software are you using? But you already said you're using AppFolio and you're happy with it and you use it across your portfolio. But I'll take you to the other side of it. What does it do well? You already mentioned a few of it, but what does it still frustrating or manual using your currently property management software?
I think one of the things is their AI chatbot is not as good as it should be. And it's a little too expensive still. So I don't think AI is caught up to the virtual assistant yet. But I think it will. I mean, I it's pretty close. It's pretty close there. So I would say using their chatbot, they used to call it Lisa, as far as scheduling and as far as onboarding, that kind of stuff, it's not there yet. So that's one thing. And they also have an investment platform. We're using a company called Cashflow Portal. AppFolio has their investor portal. Never used it. We're using the Cashflow Portal's investor platform.
Okay. And how do you manage your workflow, like lease renewals, maintenance tracking, communication with tenants? Is it all in one place, or do you find yourself jumping across different platforms?
No, it's all in AppFolio itself. That's the benefit of using that, because before we had a CRM that was doing it, and then maintenance requests were outside the box and all. One thing about maintenance requests, you'd mentioned something about wanting to work on management, and I think people need to understand this. If you can't measure it, then you can't manage it. And that's the reason why we have all of this technology. And that's the reason why we have all of this data. For us, issues with maintenance. Maintenance requests were tough in a couple of our properties. We wanted to cut down the number of maintenance requests. We wanted to have maintenance requests closed at over 90% rate. Some of our properties were at 95%. Some of them were at 70%. They had a lot of open work orders. Once we started focusing on it and having all of our 8 districts showing percent repaired, percent closed, and within 6 months, all the properties were above 90%. So if one of your goals is to be the Chick-fil-A of apartment investing and you want to keep resident retention, that's how you use technology. You start tracking what you're trying to track. So for me, it's about resident retention. My next goal is to see what our retention is and hopefully try to figure out on Q4, how can we get a retention specialist in here? If we're retaining tenants, let's say, on average, the industry is about 50%. You only maintain 50% of your residents every year. If you can get that number to 60 or 70%, can you imagine how much you save as a portfolio? That's my next little trick. And using chat, AI, putting that in there. What does a resident retention specialist look like? What's the job description? What are some of the things that I can do to, maintain residents? And it's amazing the stuff that chat pushes out and gives you these great ideas. So for us, the next iteration of becoming a much better property management company is to how do we actually go out there and retain the residents that we had? Because if you can retain residents, all of a sudden you're retaining community. People want to stay and they want to live in a place where they know other people. So that's the goal, is to be able to retain more of our residents.
And you have the ability to build the community with AppFolio, or is it not the case?
Well, we can build a threat folio. I mean, like a lot of the stuff we can also use Facebook as far as those. But I think we're probably going to start using a threat folio as well. I would love, my dream right now, because we're just envisioning it right now, is have the resident retention specialist 90 days before Maor's lease comes due. All of a sudden, I see your lease come due 90 days before. I'm going to reach out to you and say, Maor, hey, listen, we've already been living with us for 9 months. So 90 days, your lease is due. We'd love for you to stay. What can we do to make that happen? That personal touch point, all right? And then 60 days, you get the automated response, but you want to have that touch point, because one thing I see with property management and why residents leave, it's not because their rent went up. That's a fallacy. The majority of the reasons why they leave is because they were never heard. They may have a leaky faucet, but they never told you about it, but that still bothers them. So having, like you said, the AI and those automations 3 months in, hey, Maor, let me know. Is there anything going on in the unit? We'd love to be able to help you out and make sure that you're comfortable in your unit. If you're using technology and software that way, that's how you're being proactive. So then 90 days before your lease comes due, you have another conversation. What can we do? Hey, a little carpet cleaning, a $50 gift certificate, whatever that looks like, but being proactive and just wanting to keep that resident in that unit, making them happy and building a community within the community of apartments that we have.
That's very, very good. I think you just answered my next question. My next question was the pain points and frustration. What are the parts of business that keeps you up at night? And I think you just answered it. But if you have another point.
We all have so many pain points. The pain point in this business, I think, is the difference between sales and marketing. I think leasing agents and property managers, there are certain people out there that can lease like crazy. They are born to sell. They're natural born to sell. What we're trying to do is trying to create a system within our company where we do have sales trainings, but to make it more robust and to be able to teach people how to actually sell and lease and close a prospect. That's a pain point that most property management companies have. And I think the other component that we're working on, and actually chat's given us a lot of help with the marketing aspect of it. How do we become better marketers? How do we create nicer landing pages? How do we create better sales copy? How do we make our marketing look better? That's something that AI can absolutely help you out with. But sales and leasing in property management, that's something that's constantly ongoing, because you do have turnover, but you want to make sure that all of your employees, they're rowing in the same direction and they have certain systems built in within their office, because the first thing that a resident sees when they come to a property is your leasing agent. They're the face of the company, whether it's on the phone, how do they answer the phone, or do they get up and greet the prospect when they come into the office? That's important. And building that kind of culture within the organization, I think, is crucial for any company to become successful.
Very good. You mentioned a few things, but you also mentioned before that bringing new and great people. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk about that. When you switch or train new hires or switch systems, what part of that transition is the most painful?
Well, the most painful is to get A players in the right position. That really is, because you may have a great employee. They may be great at leasing, but they may be horrible at managing people. So understanding that where they excel and what they're really passionate about, what they're really good at, I think it's important. I think the other thing is, unfortunately, when you have an employee that's not working out, what we would have done early on is we would have kept that employee on. They would have sucked the life out of us. And for us, now it's short-term pain for long-term gain. If you can understand that and cut your losses early, and hey, it's not a good fit for us. It's okay. Sometimes things don't work out. That is, I think, something that we need to, we've gotten a lot better at it, but we can always get better at it. And we have something called net promoter scores. So we have net promoter scores for our employees as well. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. We have what we call our Rockefeller habits. So every quarter, we have our quarterly meeting with our executive team, and we are going over all of the habits and all of the surveys that employees have given us throughout the quarter. And we go over that and we work on the one of the 10 rock habits that every quarter. And it seems as if we want to make sure that all the employees understand what our priorities are. And that's something that we're working on this quarter. That's the rock habit right now, that they understand what the goal is for the. We want to have input from our employees. They are the ones who are actually doing the work. They're the ones who are actually interfacing with the customers. And I would say one thing to empower your employees that we've done over the last couple of years. Employers are going to bring problems to you. That's great. Let them bring the problem to you, but then let them also bring 2 or 3 solutions to that problem. Let them find the empowerment within themselves to come up with some kind of solutions. Because as an entrepreneur, as a type A personality, we always want to solve. But wouldn't it be nice if the employee came up and said, hey, Gino, by the way, maintenance requests, I think we should work on that. That's a problem. Oh, okay, Maor, how do we do that? I think that's what leaders do. They want to get as much input as possible, and they want to get solutions from their team. And then you'd be surprised at how bought in they are and how you make them feel as an employee, because it's not always about the salary. It really, to me, ultimately is about belonging to something and fitting into a culture and adding value to that culture.
That's very interesting. I think Facebook actually invented the like button through a hackathon from their employees to listen to what they think the system should look like. So they created a hackathon. They came up with, I think our post should have like a like button, and they implemented it. And
incredible.
Today.
That's revolutionary if you think about it. Like that is the dopamine. Like those guys created something incredible. Now all the platforms use that from employees' input. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Now let's go to a different area. Of course, you haven't mentioned it yet, but it's that's the core of the business. I think collection, pay tenant, pay rent. How do you collect it? How easy it is? Is there any, frustrations there? What software are you using? Tell us a little bit about your organization and how you deal with collections.
Well, the old Jake and Gino, our first property, we took cash. Big no-no. Then we took some money orders, sort of a big no-no. Then we had check scanners. And remember, this was back 10, 12, 15 years ago that the software wasn't prevalent. We didn't have it. AppFolio allows us to do that right now. We even take credit cards. I'm shocked at how many people pay rent with their credit cards. It's an amazing thing. There's a couple things about rent collections. There's something called physical occupancy, which we're at around 95, 96%. And there's something called economic occupancy, which we're at around 92 to 93%. It's important to track both of those numbers, because heads and beds doesn't mean you're collecting that money. Understanding that is very important. So for us in our market of Knoxville, Tennessee, in the Tennessee market, it's a lot more landlord friendly. Rent's due on the 1st. On the 5th, you're going to get a late notice. On the 10th, you're filing for evictions. 15th, all of a sudden, and then by the 15th, they start rolling in and being proactive. We send out what we call a weekly pulse. Every Friday, we send out a pulse about every single of our properties. It's just basically a recap. Vacant rented, vacant unrented, collections, lease terminations, lease expirations, income, expenses, delinquencies. It really gives a rundown, a snapshot of the property. So for us, understanding that's really important. Every Monday, the executive team gets on. We look at what properties are struggling with economic occupancy. I'll just give you a simple analogy. If you're going to allow people in California to go into a store and steal $950 and not arrest them, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to continue to exhibit the bad behavior. So for us, it's very important to say to the residents, hey, we have a contract. If you don't pay, you're going to pay a late fine. Actions have consequences. And I understand it may be challenging for some people because it's their relationship with money. They want to say to themselves, I want to be nice to this resident, you know what? Nice doesn't pay bills. If you want to be nice, collect the money from the resident and then donate it to somebody. But you're running a business and you have to really be steadfast about this, because all of a sudden they're late one month, then they're late the next month. And my mother, in her infinite wisdom, always told me, Gino, the bank doesn't wait for me, so I can't wait for them. And that's the reality. And we have investors and we have employees, and they can't wait for the money either. So if you're running a business, you have to set expectations. You have to make sure whatever your lease says to abide by them, but also sending out reminders, sending out texts, and when the time comes, filing for that eviction. And it's a hard business. And some people may think, oh, well, these rich landlords are getting rich. We're running a business. We're trying to provide a service here. If there's 10 residents and 2 aren't paying, you're affecting the other 8, first of all. And then the other 2 are, in effect, in my opinion, are stealing from you, because they're living somewhere, they're not paying, and you're paying for them, and you're subsidizing the other 8 as well. So for you, if you want to get into this business, that's one of the more challenging parts of the business, is to say to yourself, I can have the hat of being a good person and being friendly with these people, but at the same time, it has to be more business-like. And I would always mention it to Jake when we first started. Jake, when you go out to the properties, you're not the property manager, you're not the owner, right? You're just the investor. You're not dealing with these people, because if they see you as a friend and they start befriending you, all of a sudden it's a lot more challenging for you to go out and to say, hey, you owe me rent this month. Something always seems to come up. So for you, just keep it, like I said, business-like.
Keep the distance a
And
little
with
bit.
parameters. Yes. Very, very good. Very well said.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. To keep that in mind, of course. And what about the tech? How do you use technology? Everything through AppFolio, right?
Everything's through AppFolio. Exactly. So you can send out text reminders, you can send out automations, you can send out all that stuff through AppFolio.
And you mentioned a lot of people paying today with credit cards. Are you aware of the percentages, the fees, who pays those fees?
Well, that's the crazy part, Maor. When we first started, they were actually going to have us pay the 3%. So on a $600, rental, it's 3%, it's $18. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you have 1,000 units, it can start adding up to be a lot of money. Now, so we were very hesitant in the beginning. We wanted ACH. So obviously ACH is the best. You just get it every month. It locks into their bank account, but residents are paying their 3%. They're paying that fee. And it's really interesting. When I was in the restaurant business, the majority early on was cash, and it started going towards credit. And 3% on a restaurant that does 30 grand a week in sales, it's $1,000 a week in fees. So now you're seeing all these restaurants pushing the fees onto the consumer. And I find that to be very interesting. So credit cards, for lack of a better word, they're pretty useless for me right now, because I pay them at the end of the month. If I'm using them for points, but I have to pay the extra 3%, am I really making any money right now? I'd rather just save the 3% and just pay with cash, or pay right from the bank.
So are you pushing it to the tenant to pay?
The tenant is paying. Yes, the resident is paying. Yes.
I think it's 3.4% right now.
I mean, there's all different rates. It depends upon the size, depends upon the size of the transaction, the number of transactions you're putting through. All processors have different payment portals.
How do you currently manage contracts, service agreements with your either tenants or vendors? I want to know a little bit about learn a little bit about that from your experience.
That's a great question also. What we started doing was we started tracking. And the hardest part in our business is painters. And what we try to do is we try to go out and get 3 or 4 quotes for every job. We try to get a uniform price for our portfolio, whether it's, $20 to paint the door, $300 to paint an apartment. And we sort of did the same thing with flooring. We bought flooring in-house for a while because we were doing so many turns, but we want to be able to get a fixed and set price and have it on a spreadsheet for all of the different property managers and all the different properties to go and say, hey, Taggart, or one of our properties, Taggart, they're paying $700 to paint an 1,100 square foot apartment. That's what we need to be paying at Reardon. So understanding and having that across the platform has saved us an inordinate amount of money. And what's really interesting right now, I'm using chat also to price things out. I just did a wall at my house. I got a quote from a contractor, put it into chat. I had said, chat, break this down as far as labor, materials. Now, they may be off a little bit with labor, but with the materials, you know exactly what materials cost, and you can figure out labor. And all of a sudden, I think vendors are on notice. They know that you can go out there and within 2 minutes, look at a contract and say, hey, by the way, I'm not paying this. This is crazy. But you always have to get 3 or 4 quotes. We've done tons of paving jobs. Obviously, you want the quality of work to be there. Let's put that aside. But getting 3 or 4 contracts, and then once you find somebody you like, fortunately, it's not one of those relationships where you're going to pack it in. You still got to be on top of them, because what it's called price creep. My daughter went to her dentist the other day, and we've been going to this dentist for the last 5 years. She's 19 years old. She has a little retainer, a little brace on the bottom of her teeth. They wanted $930 to remove it. So she calls me from the office. She goes, Dad, what should I do? I said, let's go out and get another price. I said, what do you think it is? She goes, I think that price is crazy. She came home, went on chat. I thought the price was $300. I thought that's probably a fair price. On chat, this work should be between $196 and $300. I said, so Sophia, they wanted $900. You're their customer for the last 5 years. You think they'd be fairer with you, right? Literally went to the dentist today. She went to another dentist, $96 for the same procedure. She was in the chair for 10 minutes. So if a 19-year-old can do that, anybody can do that. And I think that's what the power of technology can allow you to do. It's more of an open source thing. I mean, as an adult, we sort of know this, but this is what we need to teach our kids.
Bridging the gap. No hidden fees.
Yes.
And so if you had a magic wand to fix one thing in property management operation overnight, what would you fix, and why does it matter so much to you?
That is another great question, Maor. In property management.
Overnight.
That's the thing is, I just wish that people respected property management a little bit more. I mean, like, whether it's the asset management, knowing that it's a hard job, or even the residents understanding that property management is really hard, managing all of these different units. And I think for property managers, if I could fix their mindset of having the emotional intelligence to understand that, just to be able to listen and to try to be a problem solver. That's what their job is. Their job is trying to really be a psychologist and figure out what's going on with that person and try to create a solution with that person. And then being able to work with their team. A property manager works with a maintenance tech to solve the problem. That, I think, is like the crux of what's going on in property management. When you can have all your team members working together cohesively to solve a problem for the resident, that's when magic happens. That's when prices stay full. That's when NOI gets maximized. And that's when investors get paid.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Now we are close to closing. So this has been a great conversation. For those who want to learn more about you or any of your businesses, where can they contact you or connect with you? What will be the best place?
2 places, jakeandgino.com. And I just started a new company with my family. It's called barbaro360.com. It's BARBARO 360.com. I'm becoming a money coach. And I think what we're seeing right now, money is one of the last taboos that people are afraid to talk about. There's so much emotion around money. It's such a misunderstood topic. I want people to heal or to understand what their relationship with money looks like. Once they understand that relationship with money, then all of a sudden everything starts changing. And if you're married, if you're a spouse and you're constantly fighting about money, money's just a symptom. You're really fighting about something else, and money pops up, and money is the excuse for fighting. I want couples to get on the same page, understand how they were raised with money, understand what their beliefs were about money as a child, and how they've brought that into their adult life, and how that's affected their adult life, and how that's affected their relationship with money and their relationship with their spouse.
Well, thank you again for joining us on Pickspace AI Property Podcast. And thank you for everything you shared with us today. It was a big lesson. And thanks for all of you for tuning in. If you found this insightful or helpful, follow us for more. And if you are ready to simplify property management, visit pickspace.com. See you next time.